Have you ever had one of those moments where the world just stops and you realize something you've been quietly holding together is the only thing keeping everyone else from falling apart? That's what happened to me last summer in Willow Creek, a sleepy little town in Ohio where the cornfields stretch farther than the gossip. My name's Dan Harper, and I'm the guy who built the windmill that powered our town's emergency grid until Karen Mitchell, our HOA queen bee, decided it was an eyesore and took a chainsaw to it. It was a Tuesday afternoon, middle of July, and the whole town was buzzing with the annual science fair at Willow Creek High. Kids were showing off their baking soda volcanoes. Parents were clapping like it was the moon landing, and I was at home tinkering with my weather sensors when bam, power went out. Not just a flicker, but a full-on blackout. Lights died, fire alarms screeched, and down at Willow Creek General, the ICU monitors went dark for 6 agonizing seconds. Traffic lights froze, gas pumps locked up, and my phone started lighting up with calls from the mayor, the fire chief, neighbors, everybody. But I didn't need to answer to know what happened. Deep in my gut, I knew my windmill was down. 2 days earlier, I'd noticed something off. My sensors weren't picking up the usual spin data from the turbine up on Maple Ridge. I ran diagnostics from my garage server. Yep, I'm that guy, and saw a hard disconnect. Not a mechanical failure, not a storm, but something deliberate. I figured maybe a branch got caught or a bearing snapped, so I hopped in my truck and drove up the hill behind my barn. When I got to the clearing, my stomach dropped. The turbine's 3 massive blades, each one 20 feet long, built to power half the town's emergency grid, were lying in the grass, hacked to pieces, with fresh, jagged saw marks glinting in the sun. It looked like someone had taken a chainsaw to a family heirloom. And there, zip-tied to the turbine's base, was a note in a plastic sleeve. Your windmill violates HOA Aesthetic Code 3.2. Remove all parts within 48 hours or face a $500 daily fine. Sincerely, Karen Mitchell, HOA President. Now let me back up. I live on the edge of Willow Creek, right where the HOA's grip starts to loosen. My windmill isn't some hobby project, it's a FEMA-approved emergency power source, built 10 years ago with a federal grant to keep our town running when the main grid fails. It's wired to the fire station, the school, the hospital. Hell, it's the reason nobody panics when storms knock out power lines. It's legal, certified, inspected every year, and the HOA has zero say over it. But Karen? She's had it out for me ever since I moved here. First, she tried to ban my vegetable garden for being too rustic. Then she called my rain barrel a public health hazard. This time, she didn't just complain, she went full vigilante. The timing couldn't have been worse. We were gearing up for storm season, and I'd been working with the town's emergency crew to audit our backup systems. That windmill was the backbone of our plan. When the main lines went down, it kept the fire radios crackling, the school's lights on, and the hospital's ventilators humming. And then, like some cruel twist of fate, a freak summer storm rolled in the next day. Lightning fried the transformers, the grid overloaded, and with my windmill gutted, Willow Creek went dark. I drove to the substation and found chaos: first responders scrambling, kids evacuated from the school in pitch black, drivers stranded at the gas station. The mayor and fire chief were soaked to the bone, staring at a fried fuse panel like it was a death sentence. When I showed them Karen's note, their jaws hit the ground. She did what? The mayor sputtered. I just handed her the paper and said, yeah, she brought a chainsaw to a power fight. By morning, the town was on fire, not literally, but close. Channel 7 showed up with cameras. Neighbors were posting furious rants on Nextdoor, and kids from the science fair started marching with signs that read, "Wine saves lives," and HOA equals heartless overreach always. Karen, though, didn't back down. She posted a manifesto on the HOA website, calling my windmill a visual blight and claiming it was dangerously outdated and could fling debris into homes. Never mind that the nearest house is a quarter-mile away and built like a bunker. I wasn't about to let her spin this, so I dug into my files: every permit, every FEMA contract, every inspection report. Turns out, tampering with my windmill wasn't just vandalism, it was a federal offense. That turbine was part of a disaster preparedness program, and when it went offline, it pinged FEMA's radar. Next thing I knew, I was on the phone with Agent Carla Ruiz from Homeland Security's infrastructure unit. "Mr. Harper," she said, "this is bigger than your HOA. We're sending someone out." That night, A FEMA inspector named Greg showed up at my door, looking like he'd driven through a hurricane. I showed him the paperwork, the drone footage of the turbine spinning smoothly just days before, and then the security cam footage. There it was, grainy but unmistakable. Karen, in her signature sun hat and pearls, pointing like a general while a guy with a chainsaw went to town on my blades. Greg's eyes widened. This, he said, is going to be a problem for her. The town didn't wait for the feds to sort it out. Neighbors started a GoFundMe that hit $60,000 in 2 days. The high school robotics club offered to 3D print blade connectors. Marcus, the local machinist, brought his welding rig. Even Mrs. Delaney from the nursing home sent a note saying my windmill had kept her oxygen machine running during the last blackout. But Karen? She doubled down. At a town hall meeting, she stood there with a PowerPoint titled, Preserving Willow Creek's Charm. She clicked through slides of exploding windmills from some sketchy website, fake stats about turbine-induced anxiety, and a mock-up of a sculpture garden she wanted to build on my hill. I waited till she was done, then plugged in my flash drive and showed the room the truth. The FEMA permits, the grid schematics, and that damning security footage. When Karen's face popped up on the screen, the crowd gasped. She stammered, "That's out of context," but the fire chief, Tom Rowley, stood up and shut her down. "My crew lost radio contact for 15 minutes, he said, voice like gravel. "Someone could have died, Karen. You didn't cut blades, you cut lifelines." The room went quiet, and for the first time, Karen had nothing to say. The mayor suspended the HOA's authority on the spot, and Karen was out as president, barred from ever running again. Outside, the crowd was electric teens live streaming, neighbors chanting, someone even spray-painted justice for Maple Ridge on a pickup truck. But Karen wasn't done. She sent a mass email claiming she'd been framed and tried to redraw the town map to say my land wasn't even in Willow Creek. It was pathetic, like a kid scribbling on a test they'd already failed. We rebuilt the windmill in a weekend. Dozens of us dads with tool belts, kids with Bluetooth speakers, grandmas with lemonade worked side by side, bolting, welding, painting. Karen showed up once, standing at the edge of the field in her SUV, glaring like she expected an apology. Nobody looked at her. Tom the welder just muttered, "Smells like hairspray and bad decisions," and the whole hill cracked up. She drove off, and we kept building. By Sunday night, the new blades were spinning, stronger, faster, with a solar backup and a steel barrier around the base. We lit lanterns and stayed late, sharing burgers and stories, like we'd just won a war. Karen's reckoning came fast. FEMA escalated the case to the state attorney general, and she was summoned to a municipal hearing. The room was packed: nurses, teachers, firefighters, all staring her down. I testified, laying out the facts. The nurse who nearly lost a patient in the ICU spoke next, her voice shaking. Then the HOA's ex-secretary dropped a bombshell. Emails showing Karen had planned this for months, dreaming of her precious sculpture park. Karen's lawyers tried to pin it on the chainsaw guy, but he sold her out, saying she'd paid him cash to make it quick. The council stripped the HOA of all infrastructure power, and Karen was dumped publicly, legally, socially. Months later, I was checking the turbine's batteries when a car pulled up. Karen stepped out, no sun hat, no pearls, just a tired woman in a trench coat. She stared at the blades, then said, barely audible, "I didn't know what it did, Dan. I thought I was saving the town." I didn't respond. She kept going. "They're fining me. My house might be gone. Nobody talks to me anymore." I just nodded, not for her, but because I'd already let it go. She drove off, a shadow of the woman who'd once stood there with a chainsaw and a smirk. That night, I stood on Maple Ridge, the windmill humming softly, its blades catching moonlight. Willow Creek was whole again, not just the power, but the people. We'd rebuilt more than a machine. We'd rebuilt trust. I took it further, proposing a town liaison role to protect our infrastructure, and they asked me to take it. I said yes, not for clout, but to make sure no Karen ever cuts our lifeline again. We even built a second turbine, smaller, with a plaque that reads, "Touch this, and the wind's against you." But here's the thing: Karen wasn't evil, just blind. She thought her view mattered more than a town's safety. And maybe we're all a little guilty of that sometimes, thinking our little corner of the world is the whole story. So what do you think? Was Karen a villain, or just a cautionary tale? Have you ever dealt with someone who thought they knew better than everyone else? Drop a comment. Share your story. I am reading everyone. And if this hit home, give it a share. Let's keep the lights on, together.